ותהי לי לישועה עודך כי עניתני ותהי לי לישועה הזאת היא נפלאת בעינינו בית אדוני העת הזאת היא נפלאת בעינינו נה 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 נגילה ונשמח בו זה היום עשה אדוני נגילה ונשמח בו
Good afternoon. And welcome to the Jewish Theological Seminary on this very special and historic day. My name is Alan Levine. It's been my privilege to serve as chair of JTS's Board of Trustees and to preside over the inauguration of Dr. Shuly Rubin Schwartz as the 8th Chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have all been waiting almost 2 years to mark this historic occasion. So we're especially thrilled that this day is finally here. We're very happy that so many of you have joined us in person here in our beautiful new atrium at JTS. We also know that many people have elected not to attend in person due to the recent uptick in cases and are joining us via live stream instead. So we welcome all those viewing the live stream as well. We're honored today by the presence of several presidents, deans, and other senior leaders of institutions of learning near and far. In alphabetical order, Rabbi David Adelson and Rabbi David Ellenson of Hebrew Union College, Dr. Carlos Alonso and Dr. Lisa Rosen-Metch of Columbia University, Rabbi Sharon Cohn-Anisfeld of Hebrew College, Dr. Thomas Bailey of Teachers College, Dr. Cian Bylock of Barnard College, Dr. Sebastian Fries of the International House, Dr. James Gandry of the Manhattan School of Music, Rabbi Shari Held and Rabbi Eli Confer of Hadar, Dr. Ora Horn-Prauser of the Academy for Jewish Religion, our dear friend and neighbor, Reverend Dr. Serene Jones of the Union Theological Seminary, Reverend Dr. Emma Jordan Simpson of Auburn Theological Seminary, and Dr. John Sexton of New York University. Thank you all for being here today. Many other institutions have sent delegates to celebrate as well, and I apologize to anyone whose name I inadvertently left out. Thank you all for representing your universities and schools. We are thrilled to have an esteemed crowd with us today. Finally, I want to recognize all of you, JTS's faculty, students, alumni, trustees, supporters, and friends whose presence here today highlights the significance of this historic event. Special thanks to our inaugural sponsors who are listed on the back page of the printed program and on the live stream page. I'm now pleased to call upon Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky of Congregation Anshe Hesed here on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, Chancellor Schwartz's home synagogue, to offer an opening prayer.
Chancellor Shuly Rubin Schwartz, Shulamit, Bat Harav Mordechai Vagila. To Chancellors Eisen and to Schorsch, to Mr. Levine, to all the faculty and students and friends of this beloved institution. The Talmud teaches that when it's time for new leaders, Their colleagues and constituents must have a say. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Ein ma'amidin parnas al hatzibur ela im kein nimlachin batzibur. Says Rabbi Yitzchak, you have to ask the community before you appoint a new leader. To instantiate this, he offers a homily that when God selected Bezalel to be the artist and artisan who would build the Mishkan, God first asked Moses and then instructed Moses to ask the people the same question. Hagun alecha Bezalel? Do you think Bezalel is a good choice? First Moses gives the answer and then the people give the identical answer. They say, Rabbanu Shalom, im lefanecha hagun, lefanenu lo kol sheken. Master of the cosmos, if you think it's a good idea, we're okay with it. The great religious and communal and spiritual leader in the Holy Land before the state of Israel, Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen Kook, wrote that between the lines of this little story, there is a whole theory of Jewish leadership. He said that Torah leaders, true leaders need three sorts of virtues. First, they need inner qualities, purity of heart, excellence of character. We human beings can see evidence of those virtues, but really God is the true judge of those virtues. God is bochen klayod balev. God is the one who examines us inwardly. That's God's contribution to the process of having new leaders. Next, they need wisdom and learning if they are to guide the people of the book, whose history and culture are rooted in sacred text. That's why God asked Moshe Rabbeinu, the exemplar of human wisdom, the symbol of the community of scholars, said, do you endorse Bezalel for this role? And finally, a true leader needs human connectivity, the capacity to communicate, to speak, to listen, to bond with people, to move people, to inspire them. And that's why God asked the community, are you feeling Bezalel? Can you learn to love this person? Shuly, it gives me great pleasure today to acclaim you for these vital virtues and say, Haguna Aleinu Shulamit. She is an excellent choice. May these midot stand beside you and deepen and expand as you lead, in Rav Kook's words, b'tzedek, b'chokhmah, u'b'chen, with integrity, with wisdom, and with human grace. And here on the 31st day of the Omer, with Shavuot 18 days away, I offer you the blessing of Megillat Ruth. Yiten Adonai et ha'isha haba'al beitecha kerachel u'kileah asher banu shtehem et beit Yisrael. May God make the woman who comes to this house like Rachel and Leah, who together built the house of Israel.
Thank you, Rabbi. I am privileged to introduce the elected representatives who are celebrating today's historic inauguration with us. First, a message from our United States Senator and the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer. Senator Schumer is in Washington, D.C., representing the people of New York, but has shared his congratulations on a video.
Hi, everyone. It's Senator Chuck Schumer, and it's an honor to join with all of you for the inauguration of Dr. Shuly Rubin Schwartz. This is a historic moment. The Jewish Theological Seminary, JTS, has been one of the greatest institutions in this country for Jewish higher education, and Dr. Schwartz will be the first ever woman to serve as Chancellor. As the Irving Lehrman Research Professor of American Jewish History, Dr. Schwartz, we all know, is a groundbreaking scholar of American Jewish history, a visionary institutional leader. I am confident the JTS will flourish and grow even stronger under her leadership. Dr. Schwartz, congratulations on this honor. I wish you the best of luck, and I know the future is bright for this institution. And finally, let me comment to everyone who's part of the JTS community. You are a light of wisdom and understanding in a world that's often brimming with intolerance and ignorance. We need you now more than ever to fight the forces of anti-Semitism and hate, that continue to rear their ugly head in this country. And I know that the education you get here will prepare you to serve as beacons of light for our country. So thank you all. Congratulations, Dr. Schwartz, and Hatzlacha, continued success.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. Next, I'd like to welcome to the podium New York City's Comptroller, Brad Lander. Is he here? Okay, he will join us later. We would also like to acknowledge several other governmental officials who send their good wishes to JTS and Chancellor Schwartz in honor of her inauguration. Deputy Director of Jewish Affairs for Governor Kathy Hochul, Eva Weiner, a JTS alum, and Faith Advisor and Executive Director of the Office of Faith-Based Partnerships at the Office of the Mayor of the City of New York, Pastor Gil Monrose, and Simon Seebag, Jewish Liaison, Community Liaison, Office of the New York City Public Advocate, Jumaine D. Williams. We thank the Public Advocate for sending an official citation commemorating today's events. I invite you now to turn your attention back to the video monitors to watch a wonderful tribute to the 8 chancellors of the Jewish Theological Seminary.
Since its early beginnings, the Jewish Theological Seminary has grown into a preeminent institution of Jewish higher education and a religious center for American Judaism. Across our 5 schools and multiple institutes and centers for specialized training and programming, JTS students have been nourished by both our faculty's unparalleled teaching and groundbreaking research, and JTS's vibrant Jewish life. Over the decades, JTS emerged as the religious, intellectual, and academic center of conservative Judaism. JTS graduates go on to serve as rabbis, cantors, educators, Jewish communal professionals, lay leaders, and scholars, influencing generations of Jews with ideas born at JTS. Our alumni have nurtured Jewish communities around the world, using their student experience as a model of committed and joyous Jewish life. All of this, the exceptional skills of JTS students, the institution's extraordinary faculty, and its impact far beyond its campus, has come from a series of visionary chancellors. Each was able to discern the need of their Jewish moment and foresaw not only what the Jewish community was at the time, but what it was becoming. In this way, JTS chancellors have created an academic institution that reflects the ideas animating the Jewish world and plants new ones to lead it toward the future. The journey to becoming a world-renowned institution of Jewish higher education started in 1886 with Sabato Moraes as the first president. With the help of several distinguished rabbis, Moraes developed the curriculum for JTS's first class of 10 students, which met in New York City's Congregation She'ereth Israel in 1887. Solomon Schechter became the next president of JTS in 1902, and with the number of students continuing to grow, JTS needed more space. Together with Jacob Schiff, Schechter orchestrated the purchase of land in Morningside Heights at 123rd Street, just a block away from where JTS currently stands. Over the next few years, Schechter attracted a faculty of prominent scholars, including Louis Ginsburg, Israel Davidson, and Alexander Marx. He also built up the library into a world-renowned treasure of invaluable rare books and manuscripts. In 1915, Cyrus Adler succeeded Solomon Schechter as president, JTS continued to grow in size and influence, and Adler oversaw construction of the 122nd Street campus, with its Brush, Schiff, and Unterberg buildings. He also attended the Paris Peace Conference in 1919 and later served as religious advisor on peace to President Roosevelt. In 1940, as JTS became more influential, Louis Finkelstein became the first JTS graduate to head the institution. He boldly laid the groundwork for JTS to expand in ways never previously imagined. He started the groundbreaking Eternal Light program in 1944, which shared Jewish perspectives and texts nationwide, first on the radio and eventually on television. Under Finkelstein's leadership, the first Camp Ramah was established. He also founded the University of Judaism, the Cantor's Institute, and an undergraduate joint program with Columbia University. Finkelstein also oversaw the relocation of JTS's art collection to the Jewish Museum on Museum Mile, and also greatly expanded the faculty, appointing outstanding scholars, including Saul Lieberman, Shalom Spiegel, and Abraham Joshua Heschel. During Finkelstein's era, JTS became more well-known throughout the Jewish community as well as worldwide. Presidents Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, and John F. Kennedy visited JTS during those years, and David Ben-Gurion, the first Prime Minister of Israel, was given an honorary degree. In recognition of his active interfaith work, Finkelstein was the subject of a Time magazine cover story. Gerson D. Cohen became Chancellor in 1972 and continued JTS's academic expansion with the establishment of the Graduate School, which integrated the non-theological graduate studies that took place at the institution. The double degree program at the Albert A. List College of Jewish Studies was established with Barnard College in 1979. Under Cohen's leadership, the Seminary of Judaic Studies and Schechter Israel Institute were founded in Jerusalem in 1984. Women were admitted to the rabbinical school for the first time that year, and Rabbi Amy Eilberg became the first female to be ordained as a rabbi at JTS just a year later. Ismar Schorsch became chancellor in 1986. Under his leadership, the first investiture of women as cantors began in 1987. Schorsch was invited to meet with Presidents Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton. After a devastating fire many years before, the Kripke Tower was restored, providing space for new classrooms and meeting rooms. In 1996, the William Davidson Graduate School of Jewish Education was established, creating dedicated degree and professional development programs to prepare the next generation of Jewish educators. In 2007, Arnold M. Eisen became chancellor. That same year, Eisen announced that JTS would begin accepting openly gay and lesbian students into its rabbinical and cantorial schools. Eisen was instrumental in launching initiatives such as the Center for Pastoral Education, the Block Kolker Center for Spiritual Arts, and the Handel Center for Ethics and Justice. In 2015, JTS began a major campus renovation project to ensure our campus could serve the growing and evolving needs of students, faculty, and the larger Jewish world. Known as the 21st Century Campus Project, a new residence hall, auditorium, central meeting spaces, and state-of-the-art library were planned. Eisen also established JTS's community learning programs, which expanded our scholarship beyond the classroom to Jewish learners around the world. In 2020, Dr. Shuly Rubin Schwartz became the first female chancellor in JTS history. Like the leaders before her, Schwartz is focused on JTS's long-term success and growth, on educating and training learned, thoughtful, creative leaders. Chancellor Schwartz is leading JTS into the future with a reimagined campus that is poised to meet the needs of the moment, an environment that integrates deep intellectual study and spiritual engagement, that shares ideas with the world beyond its walls, and that provides learned and innovative leadership for the North American Jewish community, Israel, and beyond. Throughout its history, JTS's visionary leaders have guided the institution toward excellence in Jewish scholarship and teaching, and a deep engagement with the society around it. Thanks to our Chancellor's vision and direction, JTS continues to perform the vital work of strengthening our communities with a vision of Judaism that is deeply grounded in the Jewish past and thoroughly engaged with contemporary society.
I'm going to roll back a few minutes in the program because I want to greet and ask to come to the podium representing the City of New York, the Comptroller, Brad Lander.
Thank you so much, Chair Levine, Dr. Schwartz. It is such an honor to be here to celebrate your inauguration. I'm Brad Lander, the Comptroller of New York City, and as the highest-ranking Jewish municipal elected official in the city of New York, it is truly my honor to be here for the inauguration of Dr. Shuly Rubin Schwartz as Chancellor. And I really mean it very much both as an officer of the city and as a proud Jewish New Yorker. Obviously, from the point of view of the city of New York, JTS is one of our extraordinary institutions that's been here for over a century, investing in this amazing set of leaders and investing in the city. And of course, Jewish leadership in New York has looked very different 136 years ago than it does today. I just went last month to the 100th anniversary of the first bat mitzvah at SAJ. So New York City and the intersection of our Jewish leadership and our pushing the boundaries on ourselves and how we think about what leadership looks like and what Judaism is something deep in the lifeblood of our city. And I feel thrilled for it as a citywide leader. As a Jewish New Yorker, I will say I feel very connected to this institution. I've been blessed with a rich Jewish life, and my rabbis have graduated from here, from HUC, and from the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College. The conservative rabbi who made the most difference in my own life was Danny Levine, the Danny Leifer, the Hillel rabbi at the University of Chicago. Just a real mentor of mine and a tremendous figure in my life. Alam v'sholom. What I just want to offer, I guess, is the following observation. I have this magnificent perspective on New York's Jewish communities. I live in Park Slope. I belong to a unaffiliated synagogue led by somebody who graduated from RRC. But I also spend a lot of time in Borough Park with ultra-Orthodox New Yorkers. That was the district that I represented. And so I have this beautiful perspective on the diversity and the disputation, the disagreements within our community. And I sometimes find myself saying, I think we've been having more or less the same arguments for 2,500 years. And God willing, we'll be having them for 2,500 more. Sometimes I'm in a room with people who are I think of as dear, dear friends, who I know absolutely did not vote for me and never will because they disagree so vehemently with my politics. And I think that's a great thing about our community, and I love it. And JTS obviously plays such a central role in navigating the boundaries. But I just want to close by reflecting and maybe pushing us a little, because this event today pushes us in a great way on those boundaries. The affirmation that Dr. Schwartz is the chancellor and the leader of this institution says this institution is firmly on the side of gender equity within Judaism, and of course it is, and I feel proud to have had a series. I sometimes say, I'm still wrestling with the questions of God's existence, but there's no other explanation for all the incredible women rabbis she is sending me. And so this institution is saying that's a central part of Judaism, and we're declaring it within the boundaries. Dr. Levine, the work you have done around Charlottesville, and obviously we're thinking about that today as we just bear the grief of Buffalo and try to get up in the morning in a world where that kind of murderous hate is still so present. But we know, the Jewish community is ruling white supremacy outside the boundaries, and we are all going to show up across every denomination to demand our own, as Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum said last night at the mayor's event, our own replacement theory, which is that we are going to replace hate with love, and that is firmly Jewish, and like whoever you are. And then there's some areas where we still have a lot of work to do, and obviously Israel-Palestine in so many ways is the hardest of those. So I'll just speak to you very honestly as a person who continues to believe in the vision of a Jewish and democratic state and believes that can only come with the end of the occupation, but who also makes room in my Jewish life and in my synagogue for Jews who don't consider themselves Zionists and who love our people, but whose passion for human rights and freedom takes them to a different place. That I'm going to tell you, I think those are folks that need to be inside the boundaries of our community. That's got to be part of the disputation we do internally. So I'm just going to end by saying thank you to JTS for pushing hard on these questions, for keeping Jewish values, Jewish life, Jewish traditions so firmly alive within the conservative movement, within the boundaries of New York City, and within our world as a whole. Congratulations. Thank you all so much for welcoming me here today.
We turn now to the star of the show, the 8th Chancellor of this great institution, Dr. Shuly Rubin Schwartz. Shuly. Shuly, we've waited nearly 2 years for this day. In the spring of 2020, you were drafted by the search committee as our candidate, and Rabbi Kalmanovsky, it was unanimous, to become the 8th Chancellor of JTS. When we realized that no one else inside or outside the institution had the depth of experience, the understanding of JTS's role in the landscape of higher education, and the appreciation of the opportunities and challenges JTS faces as a leader in transmitting Jewish knowledge, that you would bring to the position of Chancellor. As a groundbreaking scholar of American Jewish history, you had a uniquely nuanced sense of contemporary Judaism and the Jewish community in North America. You had already served JTS as Dean of List College for 25 years, Dean of the Kext Graduate School for 10 years, and Provost for 2 years. We couldn't think of anyone more qualified to lead us at this moment in our history than you. It was an added bonus that you would be the first woman to serve as Chancellor in JTS's 136-year history, helping us to attain a milestone long overdue. You've been doing this job nonstop for 2 years now, and neither I nor anyone else needs to tell you what a challenge it is. So today isn't just an inauguration, it's a vote of confidence in your measured leadership. There are more introductions to come, and I don't want to steal anyone else's thunder. So let me just welcome your beloved family and thank them for loaning you to us. We're so pleased to welcome your husband, Eric Fishman, and your children, Moshe and Aviva Schwartz, Avital and Oren Parat, Hadar Schwartz and Josh Binstock, Shira and Michael Fishman, and Rachel and Ari Weinberg. I'm very cognizant of grandparent time, cherishing every one of those grandparent moments for myself. So I know the price that you will pay in serving this institution in the coming years. So I want to pay a special welcome to your grandchildren. Ellie, Liba, Rena, Orly, Yael, Maytal, Yakir, Nadav, Aiden, Sabrina, Charlie, Freddie, Noam, Avi, and JJ. I present to you Dr. Shuly Rubin Schwartz. Oh, yes. Excuse me. I blew it. I have two more people. Got carried away with the moment. Two people will introduce her further. Dr. Ismar Schwartz, Chancellor Emeritus, and List College alum Rachel Gildener, CEO of Gather, Inc. Unfortunately, Rachel contracted COVID this week, so she sent us a video recording her tribute. We'll first hear from Chancellor Schwartz. Chancellor Schwartz.
There's an afternoon game at Yankee Stadium that Alan is eager to attend. So I have the joyful honor to present Professor Shuly Rubin Schwartz for her official inauguration as the 8th Chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary. In truth, the occasion, after nearly 2 years in office, is rather a resounding tribute to her auspicious start under trying circumstances. I salute the search committee and board of trustees for the wisdom of their choice. Professor Schwartz brings to her post a panoply of vital qualifications. As a prolific scholar of American Judaism, she earned her doctorate and tenure at JTS with 2 disparate works of intellectual and social history that bespeak the impressive range of her expertise and its underlying archival research, her ability to construct a coherent and fluent narrative, and her uncompromising devotion to lucid prose. As a tested administrator, she evinced the rare example of an academic who can truly run things. For 25 years, List College flourished under her diligent caring of students, toughness in frequent negotiations with Columbia University and ever new programmatic initiatives. As a result, its enrollment remained not only unimpaired, but trended steadily upward. Throughout, Professor Schwartz's dedication to conservative Judaism was nurtured and amplified by the steadfast adherence of her family. For the last 4 generations, a member of that family has been a recipient of a seminary degree, beginning with her grandfather and followed by her father, who led a prominent conservative synagogue in Long Island for decades. Undeterred, Professor Schwartz married a conservative rabbi, as did her sister, and raised 4 children as conservative Jews, including a son who likewise entered the seminary's rabbinical school to become the current headmaster of a large K-8 conservative day school in Baltimore. But conservative Judaism ran still deeper for Professor Schwartz than filial piety or ideological conviction. When in short order, she endured the ghastly ordeal of losing her beloved first husband and precious college-age son, Judaism emerged as an existential, life-sustaining force. Comforted by community, fortified by ritual, and borne aloft by prayer, she soldiered on in silent dignity and undiminished faith. In the final analysis, the trait that qualifies her most to lead a religious school and movement is a sterling character steeled by adversity. Life and learning are the seedbed of the authenticity of her religious voice.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Gildsner, and it is an honor to be here with you today, representing the hundreds of students who Chancellor Schwartz has taught and mentored and whose lives she has touched. I had the privilege of first meeting Chancellor Schwartz, then Dean Schwartz, in the year 2000. I was 17 years old and beginning my first year at Lisk College, the seminary's undergraduate joint program with Columbia. Even then, 22 years ago, Chancellor Schwartz was a champion of students, a bridge builder to the administration, and a trusted mentor and teacher to hundreds. Today, she is all of these things and more. In preparation for today's remarks, I reached out to a large group of Lisk alumni. The group includes doctors, rabbis, educators, both Jewish and secular, lawyers, and professors. The size and strength of this group alone is a testament to Chancellor Schwartz's incredible leadership and commitment as Lisk College Dean. I quickly, but unsurprisingly, received dozens of responses. One alum shared how Chancellor Schwartz supported her with kindness and without judgment when she weathered financial troubles paying her tuition. Another alum was the leader of the freshman seminar, List 101. And yes, the joint program was so complicated that it required its own course. He shared how Chancellor Schwartz reassured him when he felt nervous about taking on this responsibility on top of his already intense course load. He told me, quote, "I remember the way Chancellor Schwartz carried herself. She was always available to us, and she was way more than a dean. She was a mentor, a mother, and a mensch." I also heard from several female alumni who have pursued careers in academia. They recalled the ways Chancellor Schwartz personally mentored and supported them. One described her as, quote, both academically and spiritually rooted, bringing warmth and personal connection to the institution and to the study of our people's history. And of course, Chancellor Schwartz played a pivotal role in my own personal experience at JTS. In the fall of 2001, after 9/11, I was a sophomore, and I had to take a leave of absence for my mental health crisis. Chancellor Schwartz was an advocate for my well-being. She listened to my needs as a student of the seminary, but most importantly, as a human. She helped me through one of, if not the most difficult times in my personal and academic life. There is no question that it is because of Chancellor Schwartz that I successfully completed both of my degrees and have gone on to a meaningful career in Jewish nonprofit work. She remains an inspiration and mentor to me today. In each of these stories, a running theme is Chancellor Schwartz as a consistent source of wisdom, a wonderful teacher, and a model of leadership for us all to aspire to. There's no question that she carries these qualities with her into her role as Chancellor. I, my fellow List alumni, and many other students that Chancellor Schwartz impacted owe where we are today to her leadership, her vision, and her compassion. Chancellor Schwartz, thank you for all you have done and will continue to do for the Jewish future. Mazel tov to you and to JTS on this momentous occasion, and may you only go from strength to strength.
I am overwhelmed by this moment, and I thank you all for being here. I want to thank first our special guests, Controller Lander. Thank you for your warm words. And I also want to thank the other government representatives who are here, Eva Weiner, Pastor Monrose, Simon Seaback. Thank you. I want to thank you, Rachel. I hope you're on the live stream, for your warm and very meaningful words. You are a treasure. You are the best representative of JTS that I can think of, and I'm honored by your words. And to my predecessors, first, Chancellor Eisen, with whom I had the privilege of working throughout his chancellorship. Thank you for bringing your vision of North American Judaism to bear on this institution, most visibly on this gorgeous reimagined campus, which was designed to bring us together as we are together today. I thank you for that beautiful introduction, Alan. Very meaningful. You've been on this journey with me from the start. And I want to thank you, in addition to you, the entire Board of Trustees for their support, for their confidence in me. We, JTS, and me personally, are so fortunate for their leadership. Chancellor Emeritus Schwartz, thank you for your very meaningful introduction. Many decades ago, you saw in me a capacity for scholarship and leadership that I did not yet see in myself. You pushed me intellectually, encouraged my initiatives, modeled Menschlichkeit and kindness. I feel so fortunate to have benefited from your counsel and friendship throughout my career. I have the privilege of building on the achievements not only of my two immediate predecessors, but also of the 5 previous chancellors. I am honored to join their ranks, all the more so as the first woman in this role. I want to recognize others in this community who have made this moment possible. To my terrific senior team who challenge me and partner with me to develop the vision for JTS's future that you will hear about today. To the faculty, students, administrators, and staff whose day in, day out dedication to learning, to each other, and to the wider community enables us to thrive. And let's also acknowledge the unusual nature of this inauguration, as you have heard, just under the wire of 2 years since I began this role, a role I began simply because the calendar turned to July 1, but I was still sitting in my second bedroom on the same Zoom, probably with the same pair of pants. Maybe I changed my shirt. So it's thrilling to be here today in person and with all of you on live stream. And as we sang Rabbi Warshawski's gorgeous composition during the processional Zeh Hayom Asa Adonai Nagila V'nismecha Bo. This is the day God has made. Let us exult and rejoice in it. As you've heard from Chancellor Schwartz, my devotion to JTS stems from my family, individuals whose love of Judaism, of JTS, and of service to the community brought me here today. It is 102 years since my maternal grandfather graduated from JTS's Teachers Institute. You heard about my many family members who are alums. Happily, some of them are here today. They, like I, were drawn to JTS for serious learning, for community, for a rich vision of a learned, stimulating, joyous Judaism. And yes, that is the kind of Judaism I experienced at home. My father's love of Jewish learning, observance, and tradition. My mother's devotion to Jewish culture, especially the Hebrew language, and their joint commitment to bringing others closer to Judaism. In my maternal grandmother, I experienced a loving model of a woman deeply devoted to family and to her work outside the home. A dedicated volunteer initially, she moved into the work world, was widowed in her 50s, and eventually became executive director of a Jewish Children's Services organization. Little did I know that my own life would hew so closely to hers. As you heard from Chancellor Schwartz 18 years ago, I too experienced the premature death of my beloved husband and also of our adored son within 5 months of each other, leaving a gaping hole in our family that will never fully close. It affected my spiritual life a little bit differently from what you might think. It gave me a window into Judaism's power to sustain despite my inability over many months to sing God's praises and participate in communal life. I grieved very publicly in this institution, gradually refueling my soul through the embrace of family, of this community, as well as the satisfaction that I derived from meaningful work. This shattering experience sharpened my sensitivities to others' pain, hopefully enabling me to alleviate some of theirs. It also heightens the joy and gratitude that I experience with my cherished family and closest friends, my husband Eric, my children, stepchildren, grandchildren, siblings, and extended family, which, as you heard from our board chair, has blessedly expanded greatly over the years. I thank God for it all as we recite in the grace after meals, Al Hakol, Adonai Eloheinu, Anachnu modim lach, u'mevarachim otach. For everything, God, I thank you and praise you. We gather today at a moment of great societal upheaval. We face massive challenges and opportunities, the likes of which we have not seen since the aftermath of World War II. We worry about the climate crisis, the unbridled power of technology, and challenges to reproductive rights, privacy, democracy here and around the world, and more. We also worry that despite the urgency and magnitude of these concerns, the incessant media cycle and lack of a shared base of knowledge makes it hard to engage productively with others, to undertake the hard work that is prerequisite for transformational change. I believe wholeheartedly, in fact, I have staked my career on the belief that education is the key to change. Education, deep understanding born of intense intellectual engagement. Education, the spirit of collegiality and obligation to the common good and to a common community. Sadly, the educational sphere has narrowed as a space for the vigorous exchange of ideas. It has become increasingly hard to engage with others whose perspectives differ from our own. Many bite their tongues or preach to echo chambers rather than confronting opinions that might sow doubt or offend. These challenges resonate in the Jewish world as well. First, American society's polarization has unleashed, as you mentioned, alarming anti-Semitic sentiment and activity at a level not experienced in many decades. While the Jewish community may unite against this shared threat, underlying societal polarization has also exacerbated tensions among Jews around other issues, notably the state of Israel and the value of religious pluralism. Once we feel alienated from one another on a particular issue, once we stop seeing the humanity even in those we disagree with, we lose the desire to come to the table at all. We dig in our heels and resist relationship building and collective problem solving. In the crowd here today, filled with educated and committed Jews, it's easy to miss the second most pressing issue. As the 2020 Pew Research study on Jewish Americans shows, fewer Jews are building rich, sustaining Jewish lives, bound up with the Jewish story, Jewish practice and learning, and helping Jews in need. And yet, the study also shows that the vast majority of those American Jews feel tied to the Jewish people. They already have a foot in the door. Our task is to get them over the threshold, to help them intensify the connections that they intuitively feel. How? In the Jewish sphere as well, education is key. When I look to my predecessors for insight, I am keenly aware, as we saw on the video, of the monumental role they played in fortifying Jewish life and North American society. Chancellor Louis Finkelstein's aspirations, articulated in 1945, just at the end of the war, particularly resonate. He wrote, "The political, the economical, the cultural, and even the moral and spiritual realms are interdependent. There can be no religious piety without social justice, no lasting economic prosperity without a sense for the spiritual, no political stability without compliance with moral principles." This integrated approach, so rare in its day and rarer still today, epitomizes JTS's uniqueness and provides a compelling response to today's challenges. What do I mean by this? Learning to appreciate life's complexity in a nuanced manner. That is the foundation of an integrated life. That is the essence of JTS's educational philosophy, the cultivation of nuance, intellectual, religious, and emotional. First, a nuanced intellectual life. At JTS, we treasure our superb faculty who produce scholarship that illuminates our past, our texts, our values. We also treasure our material heritage, so much of which can be found in our library. Just 3 weeks ago, I was privileged to view a small women's Seder Brachot, a book of blessings published in Vienna in 1736, that includes a gorgeous Omer counter. It, along with recent scholarship, sheds light on the intensity of women's daily ritual lives. It touched the core of my religious longings. By tying the daily practice of counting the days one by one, from Passover to Shavuot, to Jewish women's practice over the centuries. Accessing our tradition can do this for all of us. When we prepare a favorite family recipe, sing a Hebrew song, or light Shabbat candles, we connect to a rich heritage that adds depth and significance to our lives. In embracing a nuanced intellectual life, we explore primary sources not only in the form of sacred texts, but also marriage documents, melodies, and modern fiction, and Omer counters, which today would include websites and podcasts and social media. When Solomon Schechter said in his inaugural address, quoting the phrase, "I regard nothing Jewish as foreign to me," he may not have known about social media, but he was signaling a commitment to this expansive kind of Jewish learning. We examine sources through lenses of interpretation that illuminate, challenge, and problematize our understanding. We consider context. We study history, the evolution of ideas over time. We use contemporary analytical tools to offer fresh, interpretive possibilities. This approach cultivates our students' critical thinking skills so that students develop into astute observers, analyzers, and interpreters. Finally, we learn from one another. Engaged with their students, our faculty encourage chevruta, learning with others, For as Rabbi Chama, son of Rabbi Hanina, taught, based on a phrase in Proverbs, Barzel bevarzel yachad, iron sharpens iron, study partners sharpen each other. When we learn from others, when we hone and reassess our views, we grow to disagree respectfully and generatively. We come to appreciate that it is the search for an elusive truth, not the truth itself, that invigorates both us and our ancient tradition. We grow more comfortable with complexity. This nuanced intellectual life leads naturally to a second arena of JTS's distinctiveness, a nuanced religious life. We achieve this by integrating our intellectual insights with a spiritual life anchored by halakha, Jewish law, cultivated through daily prayer and ritual, and deepened through a relationship with God. A relationship that can touch the depths of our souls and the heights of our spirits. This integration of the intellectual and the religious will prompt us, I dare say, compel us to change in ways both subtle and seismic. To me, this impulse is epitomized by Henrietta Zold. Steeped in Jewish learning and observance from her earliest years, Zold continued to strive for more. She became JTS's first female student in 1902, after assuring Solomon Schechter that she would not seek rabbinic ordination, something that has happily changed, as you saw, thanks to the leadership of Chancellor Gerson Cohen, and is reflected in the diversity of our student body and of the rabbinate today. Zold's prodigious education emboldened her to put her own stamp on the Jewish story. First, she made Jewish learning available to English-speaking Jews through her editorial and translation work. Second, she founded Hadassah to advance the Zionist project and empower Jewish women. Third, in 1916, she challenged the traditional convention that only males are obligated to recite the mourner's prayer, the Kaddish, for deceased relatives. Upon the death of her mother, she respectfully declined a male friend's offer to say Kaddish for her. She wrote, "Jewish custom is very dear and sacred to me, and yet I cannot ask you to say Kaddish after my mother. The Kaddish means to me that the survivor publicly and markedly manifests his wish and intention to assume the relation to the Jewish community which his parent had, so that the chain of tradition remains unbroken from generation to generation, each adding its own link. You can do that for the generations of your family. I must do that for the generations of my family." Zold knew that she needed both to maintain the unbroken chain of tradition and to add her own link to it. For Zold, as for us, a nuanced religious life must be anchored in the past and be ever evolving. Engaging with this tension, not fearing it, that is the essence of a nuanced religious life that we embrace, that we live, that we treasure at the Jewish Theological Seminary. When we cultivate a rich intellectual and religious life, we foster the third element of JTS's educational philosophy, that of a nuanced emotional life. We recognize the complexity of human emotion and know that we can love our family, our people, and our country, even though they will at times make us angry, deflate us, even break our hearts. Our tradition doesn't shy away from human frailty. Think of our Torah's depiction of our ancestors, Abraham, Sarah, Moses, others. All are flawed, all are complicated, knowing that we will occasionally be disappointed by those we love, feel exasperated by our study partners, and disagree with those we care about, does not deter us from engaging. Rather, it grounds us in humility, encouraging us to look more deeply into one another, to lift up their strengths and find our common humanity. We see the challenge of emotional nuance playing out around Israel. We feel joy and elation at the state of Israel. We celebrate its culture and achievements. Yet this state that we love so deeply can also sometimes crush our hearts when its government discriminates against our way of practicing Judaism, or when its policies fail to ensure the dignity and rights of Palestinians, Arabs, and others in its midst. As we do with our loved ones, we choose to double down on love, which drives us to work ever harder to shape and influence its choices and direction. Ultimately, this commitment to nuance and complexity prepares JTS students to develop their own compelling visions of change and effective plans of action in response to these urgent challenges of our time. In this moment of polarization and lack of deep Jewish engagement, I am also convinced that our nuanced approach is key to opening the doors to a rich, meaningful Jewish life for others in our community. Our educational approach, our programs, our stellar alumni can influence them to plant both feet within the Jewish community, which will ultimately lead it to a robust future. What concrete steps can we take to achieve these goals? First, JTS must make its exceptional offerings available to many more people by developing flexible degree and certificate opportunities, both here and online, to supplement our signature in-house programs, by expanding community learning and professional development opportunities, by optimizing the virtual platform that proved so effective during the pandemic when we grew to appreciate the deep hunger for our kind of learning throughout the world. Second, by educating future leaders who will bring nuanced conversations to the communities they serve and use the skills and dispositions they have developed to ignite transformational change. To amplify our impact, we will convene and model public discourse across the ideological and religious spectrum, bringing Judaism to bear on the major issues of our era. Our campus now, thank you, provides a spectacular setting for achieving this. Our initiatives will elevate JTS into a vibrant hub for nuanced teaching, learning, and engagement. At the same time, today's festivities speak to the many ways in which we will bring people in, as we are today in a hybrid manner, engaging with many in person and many also virtually. As we attract more people, we're going to give them compelling reasons to stay. How? We will bring leaders from various faith traditions together to address the moral issues of the day. We will expand relationships among our students and others drawn to lives of service through strategic collaborations with others, including our sister seminaries and Morningside Heights institutions. We will bridge the secular-religious divide by providing opportunities for Jewish artists, musicians, writers, actors, sculptors to access Jewish learning and living. Such experiences will not only deepen their art, but it will attune JTS students to the dynamic possibilities that can emerge through the integration of Judaism with the broader cultural milieu. We will nurture a mature and nuanced relationship between North American Jewry and the State of Israel. Finally, we will bring together a broad range of individuals to articulate the ties that bind us as Jews and generate a confident, courageous, and nuanced religious ideology, a conservative Judaism for this century. These initiatives are bold and ambitious, but as a historian, I also know that they build upon JTS's historic strengths. Solomon Schechter's early adoption of Zionism and promotion of conservative Judaism, Mordechai Kaplan's broad vision of civilizational Judaism, Abraham Joshua Heschel's political activism, all of my predecessors' interfaith engagement, and more and more and more. The North American Jewish community encompasses a wide range of practices, allegiances, and aspirations. Let's prepare all who engage with JTS to become the confident, innovative moral leaders that the Jewish world needs. When I think about this moment, I'm drawn to the Talmudic story in the Talmud tractate Menachot. When Moses went up to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, he found God tying crowns on the letters of the Torah. Moses asked, what was preventing God from giving the Torah without these decorative additions? God explained that these additions were important, necessary, that in the future, a Jew would pore over them and derive Jewish law from each and every one of them. Moses didn't understand. He demanded that God explain. So God sent Moshe into the future and plopped him in Rabbi Akiva's study hall. Moses listened to the hum of learning, hoping to recognize words of Torah. Instead, he realized he didn't understand a word of what was going on. Dejected, Moses felt that his Torah knowledge was lacking. But then the story continues. When Rabbi Akiva was discussing a matter, the student said to him, Rebbe, minayin lach, my teacher, from where do you derive this teaching? Rabbi Akiva said to them, halacha l'Moshe miSinai. It is a law transmitted to Moses from Sinai. When Moses heard this, when he heard his name, when he heard a reference to the Torah that he would soon deliver at Sinai, nityashva da'ato, his mind was put to rest. He recognized that this new teaching would grow from the Torah he was about to receive. Moses came to appreciate that Jewish learning would and should be ever evolving. And God taught Moses, God teaches all of us who look at the letters of a Torah scroll, that evolution is divinely sanctioned, that through this process, Torah becomes eternally meaningful. That is our task as a people and as an institution, to educate ourselves and others, to probe our tradition for new meaning that will engage our minds and our souls, to provide nourishment that will give us hope in a promising future, to cultivate nuance and mature insight, and most of all, to educate the next generation of Jewish leaders who will carry on this tradition for generations to come. We have much to do. I look forward to partnering with all of you to achieve our goals. Together, we can jumpstart the change that fuels Judaism's longevity. May we succeed in our efforts.
Thank you, Chancellor Schwartz, for your very inspiring words. I now invite your predecessor, Professor Arnold M. Eisen, Chancellor Emeritus, to bestow upon you the JTS Chancellor's Medal and share his own words of blessing.
So Shuly and I have a treasured JTS traditional ritual to perform here. Shuly, it's both a great honor and a great pleasure for me to pass on to you the medal that symbolizes the leadership of the Jewish Theological Seminary. It's an honor because I know it means a lot to you, as it does to me, that your name is now engraved on this list that begins with Sabbatum Aureus and Solomon Schechter and ends thus far with Ismar, me, and you. And it's a pleasure because the job of Chancellor, like the medal, is weighty with the kind of weight that on some days weighs you down, but on other days lifts you higher with a kind of gravitas, kavod, that defies the laws of gravity. We might say, taking advantage of the Hebrew, that being Chancellor is kaved with kavod. It's weighty with honor. And we might add, quoting one of my favorite Mishnayot in Pirkei Avot, that all of us, every one of us, owes one another respect, kavod, ve'ein kavod el Torah. And there is no kavod, the true source of kavod, there's no kavod but Torah. Torah is the word that Schechter used over and over again in that inaugural address that you've already cited. And that address took place in 1902, which through the math is exactly 120 years ago this year, 120 being a number that for Jews signifies a long life well lived. For Schechter, the mission of JTS, the secret of its long life, the key to its being well lived, was, quote, the bequest of Torah from one generation to another. Quote, loyalty to Torah in all its varieties was what he wanted this institution to be about, and it is. Any other center of gravity, he warned, any attempt to locate kavod outside of the Torah would, quote, end in disaster. And here we are in 2022, 120 years after he spoke, because that has not happened to JTS, and I know under your leadership, it's not going to happen. You and I share the conviction, based on experience, that teaching Torah the way we do it here at JTS, using all the resources that 21st century women and men can bring to the task, is a source of great joy, a tremendous blessing, an inexpressible privilege, a challenge that is worth every ounce of strength and resolve and thoughtfulness and creativity that we can bring to it. So my blessing to you as I bestow the medal, and I invite anyone here today who knows it to join me in, we're going to say, La'asok b'divrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of time and space, who has provided us with a path to holiness through mitzvot, and instructed us to engage with the words and works of Torah. Amen. May God be with you.
I know how inspiring the words of the early chancellors are in this institution, but how fortunate we are for these three leaders of modern JTS. It is just, we're so grateful to them for their work, for their scholarship, and for their leadership. So as we approach the conclusion of our inauguration ceremony, I want to invite all of you to join us for a festive reception immediately after the recessional. Just please remain seated until the recessional can march and exit smoothly. We will hold a mincha service at 4:30, that's 1 hour from now, in the Women's League Seminary Synagogue on the second floor. I thank everyone for joining us in this historical celebration today. And I know you join me in wishing every success to Chancellor Shuly Rubin Schwartz and to JTS under her leadership. May you and we go from strength to strength. I now invite David Schmidt Chapman, a senior JTS rabbinical student who will be ordained this Thursday, to deliver a closing prayer.
Chancellor Schwartz, Chancellors Schorsch and Eisen, Chair Levine, faculty, trustees, students, and friends of JTS, what a joy it is to be here today. The education scholar, Dr. Margaret Bookman, offered a very interesting definition of teaching, one that I would like to share with you. Teaching, Dr. Bookman says, is really learning, because you're learning the subject matter, but you're also learning the students. Teaching is learning to let other people learn. She goes on to say that this makes teaching harder than learning because teaching itself encompasses learning, thinking, and doing. This blurring of lines between teaching, learning, thinking, and doing recalls for me a Mishnah from Perek Daled of Pirkei Avot. Rabbi Yishmael beno Omer, halomed Torah al minat lilamed, maspikin biado lilmod lilamed. Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Baroka, said, the one who learns in order to teach will be able to learn and teach. That's pretty good. It could have ended right there. But Rabbi Yishmael ups the ante. He goes on to say, V'halamed al minat la'asot, maspikim biado lilmod, lilamed, lishmor, v'la'asot. But the one who learns in order to do, they will be able to learn, to teach, to contemplate, and to do. Here at JTS, this notion that teaching should intersect with learning, thinking, and doing has special resonance. Here, the lines between those functions are already blurred. Here at JTS, all of our teachers are also learners. That is one of the hallmarks of a JTS education. And here at JTS, so many of our learners, whether we are becoming rabbis or cantors or educators or scholars or lay leaders, we are also often engaged in teaching of some kind. We are all drawn to this institution, as Chancellor Schwartz said, not just to absorb Jewish knowledge, but to help JTS in its mission to disseminate Jewish knowledge embedded in a deep love for Jewish tradition and Jewish community. And JTS is also a community of doers, administrators, community engagement specialists, support staff, development professionals, artists, and researchers who help all of that teaching and learning and thinking make an impact beyond these walls. And so it seems to me, Chancellor Schwartz, that as our chief executive, you are also our chief teacher, our chief learner, our chief thinker, and our chief doer. And as we celebrate your inauguration as JTS's 8th Chancellor, I pray that you continue to have the blessing of meaningful partnerships with all of JTS's teachers, learners, thinkers, and doers. And I pray that just like Rabbi Yishmael, you help us blur the lines and connect the dots between those roles. And finally, I pray that your service in this position will be a source of blessing for you as a teacher, a learner, a thinker, and a doer. May you and may all of us go from strength to strength. Amen.
Nagila venismecha